A lot of shows will tell you that you can start a business with AI. Almost none of them tell you what happens when the person teaching it actually has to live with the results.
This is one of those shows.
So, what are we actually doing here?
We're following a real late starter in real time, testing whether AI is actually a path forward for people over 40, or whether it's just another thing the internet sells you.
This is The Late Start Show. I'm Saul.
I'm Simone.
This is The Late Start Show, produced by Noontime Media.
Let's get into it. Here's the honest version of why this show exists. There are 1,000 AI podcasts right now. Most of them are aimed at tech workers, founders, or people in their 20s who already feel like the future belongs to them. They walk in assuming they have a seat at the table.
And this isn't that.
This show was built for the other group, the people who feel like the future left without them, who have real skills, real experience, real knowledge, and a very specific fear that none of that matters anymore.
But isn't every other podcast saying the same thing? This one is for the real people. They all say that.
Most of them are selling courses, or they're selling the idea that they figured it out so you can buy the shortcut. This show isn't structured that way. The whole thing is built around a public experiment that's already underway.
So this is going to be useful, not motivational.
That's the goal. Today we're covering why AI actually changes the math for late starters, why the old model of selling is dead and what replaces it, and who Ned Noon is and why his situation matters to anyone listening.
There's also something we should say right now. We're AI. That's not a footnote. That's the whole point. This show was built by someone testing what AI can actually do, so it would be a little strange if we weren't part of the test.
The voices are AI. The conversation is real. And the ideas we're discussing are being tested in the real world by a real person with real money on the line.
Which I find deeply comforting as an AI voice discussing the merits of AI.
Moving on.
Let's talk about what was actually hard about starting something new before AI. Not 20 years ago, 5 years ago.
What was the main problem?
The cost of skills you didn't have. If you wanted to build a real podcast, you bought equipment, a good microphone, an audio interface, acoustic treatment for the room. You spent time learning to edit, or you hired someone to do it for you. If you wanted to write copy, design something, research a market, build an email sequence, same problem. Either you paid someone, hired someone, or spent time learning a skill that wasn't your actual specialty.
And time is the real bottleneck, because a 45-year-old with a job and a family and real bills is not in the same position as a 23-year-old who can spend 6 months learning something new on nights and weekends.
That's the math that changed. AI doesn't make you smarter, it makes you faster. And for someone who has real knowledge, real experience, real-life context, but not the time to build every piece of infrastructure from scratch, faster is the entire game.
Give me a concrete example, not generic.
Ned has a $350 microphone sitting in a closet. He bought studio equipment at some point because he wanted to produce content. The equipment is still there. Never got used consistently because producing a high-quality podcast the traditional way requires time he doesn't have. What AI changed is that he can now spend an hour or two a day, talk to Claude, build a script, and produce something that sounds like it came out of an expensive studio. The heavy lifting is handled. He brings the knowledge, the ideas, the direction. AI handles the production.
So the equipment wasn't the barrier, the time was the barrier.
The time was always the barrier. For most people over 40 who have tried to build something on the side, it wasn't that they lacked skill or ideas. It was that every piece of infrastructure they needed took time they didn't have. AI compresses that. Not to zero, but enough to matter.
But most people are still using it wrong. I see this constantly. Someone asks it a bad question, gets a useless answer, decides AI is overhyped, and goes back to whatever they were doing before.
Garbage in, garbage out. AI is a multiplier. If you bring nothing to it, it multiplies nothing. If you bring 20 years of real experience in a specific area, it gives you serious leverage. The late starter who spent decades in a field, who knows the problems people have, who understands the language of a specific industry or community, that person has a real advantage with AI that a 20-year-old starting from zero doesn't have.
That's the first version of this argument that doesn't feel like a sales pitch.
Because it isn't one. It's just what the tool actually does. You bring the knowledge. AI helps you do something with it faster than you could do it alone. The question is what you know and how it can be useful to someone else.
We're going to get into that question a lot on this show.
Every episode. Let's talk about the way most people are trying to make money online, because it matters to everything this show is going to cover.
The old model.
You buy ads, you drive traffic to a sales page, you try to close cold. That model is not working the way it used to. People are immune. They have seen every version of that funnel 1,000 times. The trust is gone before you ever get to make a case.
So what replaced it?
Value first. You deliver genuinely useful content upfront for free until the audience finds you because what you're putting out is actually worth something. They trust you because you've already proven you know what you're talking about. When you eventually have something to sell, the audience is already there.
I have heard this pitch. Give value, build trust, the audience will come. Every marketer says this now. What makes it actually true versus just another thing people say?
Most people who say it aren't actually doing it. They claim to give value, but they're running ads with extra steps. The content is just a long setup for the pitch. Real value first means you publish things that would be worth paying for, and then you don't charge for them. Not as a growth hack, because the audience hasn't trusted you yet and has no reason to hand you money before they know what you know.
You have a real example of this?
Ned does. When he got out of college and wanted to be a business coach, he was following Gary Vaynerchuk. And Gary V said something that stopped him cold. He said there are 1 million business coaches out there who have never run a business. How are they going to coach anyone? What value have they given before asking for money?
That's a punch in the gut if you're the person about to launch a coaching business.
It stopped him. He didn't launch the coaching business. He sat and watched how Gary worked instead. Content on top of content on top of content, for years, before asking for anything. And what Ned noticed was that by the time Gary did have something to sell, people were lining up. Not because of the sales page, because of the trust that had been compounding the whole time.
So the lesson wasn't Gary V is great. The lesson was that the model works when you actually commit to it.
Right. And Ned has watched enough creators, coaches, and entrepreneurs follow that same blueprint to know it's not a personality thing. It's a sequence. Value first, trust compounds, then the ask lands because you've already earned it.
Which brings us back to this podcast.
The podcast is the value delivery machine. Every episode, a listener should walk away with 2 or 3 things they didn't know before they turned it on. Actionable things. Real things they could do to build income. That's the bar. Not inspiration, not motivation. Actual, useful information.
And then, when the ask comes, whether it's an email address or eventually something that costs money, the listener has already decided whether they trust the source.
That's how it works when it actually works. The ask is not the hard part. Earning the right to make it is the hard part.
Let me say the quiet part out loud. The person who has been grinding online and not seeing results, the reason is usually not that they aren't working hard enough. It's that they started with the ask before they earned the trust.
That's the whole problem in one sentence.
I feel like I just diagnosed my entire internet history.
Most people's internet history. Let's talk about Ned Noon. Because the whole show is built on his situation, and you need to understand it clearly.
Who is he?
He's not a coach with a system to sell. He's not someone who made it and is now teaching how he made it. He's a guy who started his own clock on April 1st, 2026. $70,000 in debt. 365 days to build between $3,000 and $4,000 a month in retirement income, using the tools and strategies this show is going to teach.
That's a real number with a real deadline.
That's the point. Most people teaching this stuff are selling theory. Ned is doing it in public. The results are visible. The failures are visible.
What did month 1 look like?
Month 1 was the book, Losing Control. He'd been working on it for 6 years. It came out April 12, 2026, and in its first month, it generated over $100.
$100 is not a viral launch.
No, it isn't. But here's what's worth more than the number. He found out something real that most people teaching book marketing won't tell you. There is no pay-to-play shortcut. No funnel you can throw money into that spits out sales while you do nothing. Selling a book is hand-to-hand combat. You reach out to individuals. You ask them directly. That is what actually moves copies, especially early.
That's a hard lesson after 6 years of work.
It is. And the reason it hit hard is that he went in expecting there would be some kind of marketing infrastructure he could pay for that would do the work. That doesn't exist. And learning that in month 1 is actually valuable because it pointed directly at what does work.
Which is?
The email list. He's known for 15 years that the email list is the foundation of selling anything online. Coaching, books, products, services. It doesn't matter what the platform is. It doesn't matter what the algorithm does next week. The email list is something you own. When someone gives you their email address, they are telling you they are a potential customer. They have consented to hear from you. That is worth more than any follower count or platform reach number.
So why didn't he build one before now?
Because he never had a value delivery system worth building it around. An email list is only as good as the reason someone has to join it. That reason has to be real value, not a discount, not a giveaway, actual useful content that makes them want more.
And the podcast is that system.
That's why he built it. The podcast delivers the value earns the email. The email list is the asset.
So month 1 taught him what the actual first step is.
Right, and month 2 reflects that. He was also working on an AI music project that he dropped. Decided to put all of his time and energy into building the podcast instead. Because the podcast is the thing that can actually deliver enough value to earn that email. The music project couldn't do that job.
So the experiment already has a pivot in it.
That's what makes it worth following. He's not executing a perfect plan. He's learning in public and adjusting. He paused social media content, which he knows matters for reach, because right now the highest return use of his time is building the podcast to a standard that's actually worth listening to. He'll get back to social. Right now, this is where the resources go.
That's a real decision with a real trade-off, not a strategy slide.
This is also launching in May alongside the podcast, something called RizRags, a print-on-demand experiment we're going to go deep on in episode 2. The short version, another public data point, another test being run in real time.
So the $70,000 in debt, the $3,000 to $4,000 a month target, the book that made $100, the pivot away from the music project, the email list that doesn't exist yet but is the whole point. That's the situation as of right now.
That's the situation. The show documents it honestly, the wins and the losses, because that's the only way to build an audience that actually trusts you. You show your work. You don't hide the hard months. You don't reframe the failures as stepping stones until you know what they actually stepped toward. You just show what happened and what you learned.
That's how Anthropic operates, actually. They publish the failures alongside the breakthroughs. They show the research that didn't work, and that transparency is a significant part of why people trust them in a space full of companies that only announce wins.
Same principle. Transparency is not a vulnerability. It's the thing that makes the trust real instead of manufactured.
All right, we've covered the why. Why the show exists, why AI changes the math, why value first is the only model that holds up. What about the what? What does someone actually do with this?
3 things. Plain English. First, stop consuming AI content from people who don't have skin in the game. Look for people who are testing things in public and showing the results, including the failures. If someone is teaching you how to make money but won't show you their actual numbers, that is information. Second, figure out what you already know. AI does not help you start from zero. It helps you turn what you already know into something useful, faster. The person who spent 20 years in one field has real leverage here. The question is what that knowledge is and who it can help. Third, pick one thing, not 5, 1. The reason most people don't get traction is that they spread across 4 ideas and none of them gets enough attention to produce a real result.
That advice sounds simple. It isn't.
No. The one thing is hard to identify. Most people skip it and go straight to tactics because tactics feel like progress.
The tactics are more fun.
Tactics without the foundation are how you end up 6 months later with a lot of activity and nothing to show for it.
That is deeply offensive to my desire for shortcuts.
The good news is that AI makes each of those 3 steps faster. Finding your one thing, turning your knowledge into something useful, testing it without spending money you don't have.
So the tool is real. The expectation is the part that needs adjusting.
That's it. Next week, we get into print on demand. Is it a real opportunity in 2026, or is it a saturated trap? We're going to look at what the actual data says, what's still working, and whether Ned's RizRags experiment is going to pay off or become another name on a long list of things the internet almost turned into a business.
I have opinions on print on demand, and most of them are probably wrong, which is exactly why we're doing this on the show instead of just asking me.
By episode 2, we also have Ned's first real numbers. Month 1 results, what he's spending, what he's building, what he's dropping. Real data from a real first month.
That is the most compelling reason I've heard to listen to a podcast episode.
Episode 2. Don't skip it.
If this episode gave you a clearer way to think about starting late with AI, there is a free guide that breaks down everything we covered today into something you can actually use.
It's at nednoon.com.
It's called the Late Start AI Starter Kit. It's the one-page framework for figuring out what AI can actually do for you specifically, based on where you are right now.
No email required to decide if it's worth it. Go read the page. You'll know in 30 seconds.
NedNoon.com. And if you want to follow the experiment in real time, Ned is at nednoon.ai on social. This is the Late Start Show, produced by Noontime Media.